Something else we need to talk more about is code first design. Now, we've already seen, and I think you're very impressed by now with what migrations can do for us, right? It's just amazing that we can do this code first approach, that we can actually just create our model classes and have migrations go and actually create the database. But there's a bit more to it we should be aware of than just that. We have to talk about these two commands, ensure deleted and created, and then put it all together with some options for ourselves, right? So quick review here, right? Any framework core does support both code first and database first approach, right? So you can take an existing database and have it scaffold or generate all your model classes for you, right? So that's often done if you're going to work in a legacy system and you're saying, okay, now we want to update our approach. We want to actually do a something like an MVC application. So it's a quick and easy way to get your model classes generated right from the existing database. Now, we will look at that later in the course, but for now, we're going to focus on the code first approach, as we've been doing, starting with our model classes and having the system generate the database for us, right? We've seen migrations allow us to evolve the application's database schema, okay, the model, so to speak, over time. Every time we make a change to the model, we just can create a new migration, okay? Migrations have that up and a down, so with a series of them, you can go forward through the design changes, roll back to an earlier design if you want to that way as well, right? By the way, to do that, the actual command, you just say update database dash migration and the name, you don't have to have the timestamp, but the name of the migration itself, and you'll just go back to that earlier migration. As it roll back, it applies all the changes in the down of each one, okay? If you're going back 2 or 3 different generations in the migrations, that's not a problem, right? So it's a nice way to try out changes, allows you to easily go back and forward through the migrations and so on, okay? So that's great, okay? Now, mind you, migrations have limitations, okay? Depending on the database, the limitations are more severe or less severe, okay? SQLite is one of the ones that is more limited in terms of its support for migrations, although, it's they've been improving it. And truth is, when we first started with this tool a few years back, you virtually could never have 2 migrations in a row. It was very rare that you had that luxury, right? You pretty much always had to drop and recreate migrations every time, okay? But it is greatly improved, and we can, do sometimes 2, 3, 4 or more migrations in a row, depending on what changes we've actually been making, okay? But eventually, I can almost guarantee you will run into one of the limitations, right? By the way, just have a look at yourself, click the link in the PowerPoint, you have a copy of this, and go and read through some of the limitations that are specific to SQLite. Now, you could manually write some code, right, to make required changes and add it to a migration. It's done in the real world as well. It's not the most common practice, and it's not one that I, generally speaking, encourage, because then you're kind of stuck with that manual written code in the migration scenario, right? But if you're still in development, you can do that, or you can do what I've demonstrated just the other day. Just delete the database, delete the migrations folder, and start a fresh set of migrations. And that's always something you can do. Okay, if you're happy with, you said, no, you know what, we're really happy with the model as we've got it developed so far. We're not going to be rolling back to an earlier version. Okay, so we're good, right? Now, a couple of other choices. Truth is, we don't even absolutely have to use migrations, right? We have additional commands that we can use as well, okay? So no, there are other ways besides migrations. We can still do code first development without ever even creating a single migration, right? We can just call context.database.ensureCreated, okay? Now, as long as the database doesn't exist, okay, it will create the database and then go on, okay? After creating the database, it will build all of the objects in the database to match the current model design. Basically, it generates the same type of code you would get in the up, right? The up of a migration, and executes it directly in the database. We never see it. We never have to worry about it, okay? It just happens, okay? So basically, it takes your model, boom, builds the database to match. But, okay, if the database already exists, well, it just wipes its hands, says, hey, job must be done. So it doesn't make any changes, okay? It doesn't modify or migrate or adapt the database in any way, shape, or form. If it's there, okay, then even if you've modified your model, tough on you, okay? It does not touch the database if it's there, okay? So it only really works in conjunction with deleting the database first, okay? So that's where this other command is often used first. We can call ensure deleted, and instead of manually deleting the database, this will go and do it in code. That typically might be used along with an ensure created. So we just delete the database, recreate it again, okay? Now, as we will talk later on, ensure deleted returns true or false, okay? And there are some circumstances in which it will not be able to delete the database. So we'll eventually add a bit of extra code to make sure that we actually guarantee that the database is deleted, right? File locking and sometimes can interfere with that. But we'll keep it simple for now. We'll just assume that if we say ensure deleted, it really is deleted, and then we can go ahead with this approach, right? So option one, we can initialize the database simply with ensure deleted and then ensure created. If we do this every time we start and run the application, right, we're good, okay? It will just delete the database, recreate it, we'll have code in place to seed data, and away we go, right? So this is good if we messed up the sample data, right? Maybe we change things and it's all messed up, well, then we just want to delete it, start fresh, right? With a new batch of sample data and everything else, right? But this is bad if we want to experiment, right? Maybe we're going to test adding and modifying records and so on, okay? Testing, then we delete. And we do this in a few different cases. Well, if we stop running and start again, all of the changes that we've just made in our actual sort of test scenarios are gone, right? Because we're starting blank and fresh again, okay? So any modifications we've made to data will also be lost, okay? So what we might do is we might simply comment out those two commands, the ensure deleted, ensure created command, okay? And only if we need to start over again, remove the comments and basically allow them to execute and then start fresh because we intended to this time, right? That's one option you could do, okay? Note, we don't even ever have to create a migration following this approach, okay? We won't have a migrations history, but that's okay. All right, even the database, there won't be that table. Option two, we could initialize the database by calling ensure deleted and then calling .migrate, okay? If we do this approach, we wipe out the database, okay? And then we refresh the database by applying whatever migrations that we have, okay? We must have a working set of migrations in place, okay? And if you want, then comment out that ensure deleted most of the time and only put it in back into action if you want to start fresh. That's another option in terms of how you initialize the database itself. Okay, so putting it all together, where does this code go? Works best if we put it near the top of our database initializer class. And this ties in with our discussion we had about code organization. We talked about using regions, okay, and in particular, I focused on the initializer class because this is usually the one that grows and grows the most as we work inside of our MVC application. So we can use regions and create a region at the top just for the code, whichever approach we decide to use with our initializing approach, right? Whether we're going to use just create the ensure created or migrations or a combination of all those different options that we talked about, right? So you could, at the very least, this is a minimal approach, right? Have a region to prepare the database. If using migrations, we could call ensure deleted and migrate, and then comment out things that, you know, if we don't really want to, if we want to keep on playing around, creating test records and so on, right? Or if we're not using migrations, you can use the other approach as shown here and just, you know, comment out code, put it back in place and use it. But, you know, that's a very crude approach. We're going to actually, when we come to the next step, step 5, we're going to put a much more elegant approach in place, right? But the concepts are basically the same. Okay, we're ready to get up and go for it. Yes, that's my dog. There she was sleeping behind me, so I took that picture. All right. Yeah, go for it, as we said, okay? Continue to use migrations. I'm encouraging you to do that for project part 1, okay? If you want to later on switch to using the ensure created approach, that's entirely up to you, Okay. But it's important to get some experience using migrations because we'll likely be using them in your future career. So you want to have that under your belt, so to speak. That's it, basically. Thank you for paying attention. We'll carry on now with our next step 5.